Oh, okay, I think it's fixed now. Yes, there's movement. Okay, is the mic levels and everything good? Yes, moving and audible. Okay, good, 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 good. Good, good, good. Yes, so a lot of people on Twitter expressed that they would like for me to go over like a rough breakdown of convention vending costs for Artist Alley, how to do like planning and budgeting for it, how much it costs to do Artist Alley. Wait, slight reverb. Uh-oh. Okay, I will fix that 1 second. Oh, you're right. There was a reverb I forgot to turn off from my last karaoke session. Whoops. Yeah, that's what happens when I haven't streamed in a while and then I forget to change everything back. Okay, good catch. Thank you. So, enormous scuff aside, yes, we're gonna talk about vending, artist alley stuff right now. Next time, I'll do some drawing, but this time, I want to get this talk done because people were interested in it. You love the bun tower, yes. Long live the bun tower. I will be having some new stream assets to share soon, TM, that they've been in progress for a really long time. And I also have a new cover soon. I'm just doing the video for it now, so soon, soon, soon. Okay, so yes, excited for cover. I think you will be in particular because it is a song from an artist that you like. Anyway, so um to start off, I do have to like say that, all this gotta preface it with all this. Like, so a lot of times people will like DM me or like ask me for like, numbers or things or how do you do this? How do you do that? And like it is literally impossible for me to give them the exact like here's what you should do, or here's what you not should not do because everybody's situation has like all these variables that are super different from each other. So the thing that works for me is probably not going to work for someone else and vice versa. So, you have to keep all these variables in mind. So, like, the objective here is I want to explain, like, my thought process between, sorry, behind some things and hope that other people can, you know, use that and utilize it based on their situation. Because it's not helpful if I just tell you, like, oh, I spent $500 on this. Because, what if their situation is not one where they should or can be spending $500 on that one thing? Or what if they need to spend like $800 on that thing instead? So, I do have these things I plan to break down into different like brackets of price and experience. Oh, hello. Yes. So, different brackets of price and experience so that cuz everybody started from somewhere and I also started like my very first merch project was like I spent $200 making some acrylic charms. And it was a little cardboard, like tiny little cardboard box of just like a few, several dozen acrylic charms that I had to put together. And, for me, that was a humongous deal at the time. And so I kind of want to cover like, okay, this is how it started out for me, and then this is how it is now. Because obviously, the numbers that I would be using to calculate now are not helpful for someone who's starting out. And I also do want to say that a lot of the numbers I've presented for my estimations are on the generous side. And that's because, just by principle, I like to overestimate and budget higher because, you know, you want to be safe, safety reasons. And it is entirely possible to do convention on a much smaller budget, and I have done it before, but there's some reasons why you may not want to, and I'll get into that also. And also, so doing conventions is like something with a very high upfront cost, and it is something that will get better with time, and you'll figure out more of what you personally need as you do it more. So, first, I want to go over the concept of breaking even. So, a lot of people think, like, okay, I spent $200 on my table, and I spent like $300 on travel, and I spent like, I don't know, $400 on the hotel, which means I just need to make back that much. Like, I just need to sell that much in like sales, gross sales, in order to break even, which is not the case. So, um, of course, you do need to you have to add up your production costs, attendance costs, food, all that, the normal stuff that you think is obvious. But you also need to account for taxes. Yes. So, this is the first big trap a lot of people fall into, and it's taxes, which is both sales taxes and your income taxes. So, most states in the United States will require sellers to collect and then remit to the state government sales tax. So, this is usually somewhere between 6.5 to 10% of your gross sales. So, when I say gross sales, for people who don't know, gross sales is like you charged $10 for the thing and you collected $10. So $10 is your gross sales. That's like your sale before you take out your expenses, okay? Yes, hello. So, you have to make this distinction between gross sales and net sales. Net sales is what you got like after you take out um, you know, the things like the fees and all that. So when you pay your sales tax, you are paying the percentage of your gross sales. Okay? And like you can start to see really quickly how this can become a problem if you thought that you only have to pay taxes on your profit, which is not the case. All of this sounds like stuff you learn in your financial accounting class because there's a good reason for that because a lot of what you have to do for Artist Alley is basic financial accounting because, it is a business and you have to treat a lot of it the same as business because you are, doing business operations. And so so make sure, you guys, when you set your prices for Artist Alley sales and stuff, you need to be accounting for the fact that you will have to pay sales taxes. Do not commit tax evasion, okay? I know a lot of people will think like, oh, if I just take cash, I don't have to report my cash sales. That's not true. I don't want people to get into trouble, and it can, hurt you down the line if you get audited or, if there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to do that, okay? So, report all of your gross sales. Do not try to skimp on your taxes for sales tax. So, the other thing that you may not think about that you need to account for in your costs is business permits and, like sales permits. In a lot of states, a sales permit is, not something you have to pay for. Like in California, you don't have to pay for a sales permit. But in some states, you will have to pay like a relatively small amount, like maybe $30 or something, to file for a business permit. So, keep that in mind. You have to make sure you check out the state in which you intend to be vending at. And this is a relatively newer thing, but um, a lot of conventions are now starting to require liability insurance for their vendors. And this kind of extends to some artist alleys, like not all, but some artist alleys. And especially if you want to do like bigger, like exhibitor vending, you will likely have to provide liability insurance paperwork. And in my experience, this usually costs somewhere between like $70 to like $300. Um, so that's like its own entire complicated thing, and it really varies by event, but it's something that people don't think about until they get slapped with it, and then they're like, oh, what do you mean I have to pay like $200 for this? So there's all this like paperwork you have to potentially think about. And then there's the less tangible stuff. So, like your income taxes. So, when you are selling things as your own business, uh, it's different from when you are getting paid a wage from, like, a boss with management and stuff, because you are your own boss now. So, a lot of the time, you know how every year people file their taxes and they get their tax returns? So it's a little different if you're self employed. So when you are self employed, you don't get your taxes withheld when you get paid because you are your own boss, right? A lot of people who work for a company in which they might get a W 2 paperwork, they will get their taxes withheld for them, and the company will, file that. And then at the end of the year, or like when tax season rolls around, then you will get to file for your tax return. And then some people get like, money back during tax season. So that's not you if you are self employed. So if you're self employed, since you're not getting any of your taxes withheld, you need to like save and account for the fact that you will have to pay out a significant percentage of your income when tax season rolls around. So when so like it kind of depends on like your state too, because there's federal income tax and state income tax. And the federal income tax, that's like a set percentage with like, that you'll have to pay, but the state income tax varies by state. So um you might have to pay like 20% or more of your total like earnings. Like when I say earnings in this case, I mean like your income, your profits, not your gross. So make sure you keep this in mind when you're thinking about whether you really broke even or not, because if you say like, oh, I made like $500, and maybe you didn't actually make $500 because you still have to deduct like 20% of that 500 for your income tax. So maybe you thought you just broke even, but actually you went negative. Okay. And then the other important consideration that you should be making is whether you broke even on your own time and energy invested in this convention. Because maybe you just flat broke even, like you came out with, like, I don't know, $10 positive or something, right? But if you think about like the amount of time and energy you had to invest in preparing and going and spending all of those hours like working for that weekend, didn't you make like, I don't know, 2 cents an hour or something if you feel like you just flat broke even? Because then you didn't account for your own time invested. So, you want to make sure that you are also being safe and fair to yourself when you calculate like the true meaning of breaking even for yourself. So, I will talk about like deductions and stuff later because that's like a whole other thing. But uh, when I say breaking even, we're just talking about your costs versus whatever you earned at the event. So also, I wanna when we're still talking about like you're paying yourself for your own time. I also kind of want to talk about the importance and value of your own comfort when you are traveling for a convention because I learned there is value in paying for your comfort and health and safety. And, tabling at a convention is really, really hard work. It's strenuous. You want to be like in your best like position to do it. Because also, let me say, if you are like dead at your table, like just completely zonked out, it will be really bad for your sales, actually. People, like, they don't want to engage with that. They're gonna see like you are gonna you that you don't look like responsive and they don't really want to approach you to buy things, okay? So, so on the topic of like the importance of like valuing and paying more for your comfort, I'll share a story about like my most disastrous convention I ever did, like when I was in college or so. So, I went to college in the Midwest in like Indiana, and I wanted to go to Anime Los Angeles. And so at that time, I was like fairly new to doing conventions and stuff, but I felt, a little bit confident about it. So I mostly had prints and acrylic charms basically. That was like most of my stuff. So I was still in college at the time and I had classes to go to, right? So what I did was I skipped my Thursday classes to take like a Greyhound all the way to Chicago. And then I took a flight like overnight, like super long flight overnight and landed in LA at like midnight, okay? And I was all alone, by the way. And I just had like one bag with me. And this was a very bad decision, okay? I took the public transit in LA by myself at midnight, and then I took a train from, the center of LA to Ontario, which is, a couple hours away from the center of LA in California, which was where the convention was being held. And then I arrived in Ontario at like 5 a.m. or something. And then I went to go, that was like Friday morning, okay? And then I went to go set up at the convention. And that convention was like the worst experience I've ever had because I was just so like stressed and tired. I also um really cheaped out on trying to like find a place to stay. So I stayed in like this room with I don't know, like 10 other people and I was sleeping on top of this sleeping bag on the floor like next to the window. I say on top of because we actually couldn't open the sleeping bag because it was there was something wrong with it. And it was so cold. So basically, my health was just not in a good place that entire weekend. And because I was also by myself, I did a lot of conventions solo back then. I didn't have a helper to help me go get like food, water, or anything. And, I was trying to stay like super cheap about all of my food and everything like that. So, like, on top of that, the sales at that convention just weren't so good for me for a number of reasons, but I am very sure that, my state of being did not help that. So, all in all, at that convention, I sold a gross total of like $650, which was a tremendous loss actually when I took into account like my flight and everything. And then like Sunday night, I had to pack up, grab everything, catch a flight to go back to school. And then I went, flew overnight, took a shuttle back from the airport from Chicago to Indiana. And then I went to class on Monday morning. So that was absolutely not worth it. So, a lot of people think, "Oh, it's okay. I can make this work. I can like do a convention on a budget if I just like sacrifice all of this like all these comfortable things like being able to sleep well and all that." And I am here to tell you it's not worth it. Don't do it because it was absolutely like unsafe of me. Like looking back, it is a miracle that I didn't get into some trouble. It was unsafe and it was not good for my health and also it just wasn't worth it for like the actual financial loss I took. So remember to value your own comfort. Like if you think like, oh, I can only go to this convention if I like really struggle and like suffer, then don't do it. Yeah. I'm not here to romanticize my suffering. I am trying to tell you guys not to go that way. It's not the way. Okay. So this is probably what most people wanted to see most, which was like breakdown of costs. So I've kind of split it into like three rough tiers, like beginner, intermediate, and like advanced. And so remember that these numbers are kind of assuming that you're paying for everything up front for the convention. And there's some costs, like the cost of merch production, that you can spread out over time because you probably won't sell everything that you made at the convention. So, you're probably going to have some leftovers that you'll be selling online afterwards or something, or, stock that you hold on to that you sell across multiple conventions. Um, these numbers are also on the more generous, higher side, and there are more ways to cut costs, but I recommend, like, just being prepared to dump more money into it just to be safe. Um, on top of that, let's see what else I wrote here. Sorry. Uh, Yeah, so at the beginner level, I'm not accounting for bringing helpers here because, at a smaller convention, it's entirely possible you can do it solo. But of course, you're going to have to make your own call about, like, what is comfortable for you. If you do have a helper, I do want to stress that, you know, you should probably try to compensate them in some manner. Like when I was first starting out, obviously this was a lot harder, but try to compensate them the best you can. Now I'm at a point where I can actually afford to like, pay people like as a job to help me out at conventions and, obviously covering other people's food and like hotel and everything is not cheap, but you know, if if you can, I think it's important to compensate people properly for their help and their time. Um, there's a lot of extra factors in this. Like when I say ride shares or driving or flight, maybe if you drove to a local convention that's in your city, you don't have to pay any of that flight. You just have to pay gas, which is, a lot cheaper than paying for a flight. And also, if you're driving yourself, you won't have to pay for ride shares. But this is kind of assuming like the most expensive like possibility. Yes, we're including parking in this, yeah. Parking at conventions can stack up real fast, like, uh, because it tends to be very limited and, you know, event parking always is a lot more expensive than regular, like, city or street parking. On the topic of, like, driving, ride shares and stuff, the cost of them will really depend on the distance to the convention and, how long it takes to get there. So I used to book hotels really far away from convention thinking like I was saving money because, they were cheaper when they were not super close to the convention. But actually, I was not really saving money because the amount of money I then had to spend on taking like Uber and Lyft and stuff to get to the convention back and forth from the super far hotel, it basically like just bridged that entire gap. So you are not necessarily going to be saving money if you get a farther hotel. So keep that in mind when you're budgeting for your convention trip. There are some ways, like let's say if you're flying and you don't want to like or you cannot bring all of your stuff in your luggage and you don't want to, ship it to the convention because if you use the convention's like ship to the con service, it's really expensive. And I'll get more into the cost of that later, but like I do a lot of that now and frankly, it's completely not viable for like beginners. So there's some ways you can kind of save some money here by strategizing. So a lot of hotels will allow you to ship small boxes to them. So if you have things to ship like business cards or prints, the big thing was I used to always ship my prints to hotels all the time, every single time, because prints are heavy and they're hard to travel with, and they would get damaged in travel. So I used to just have all of my prints, which were, printed by Cat Print. I used to have them sent directly to the hotel. But you should call the hotel ahead of time and ask whether or not they can receive packages and also, like, the process for that. Some of them do require a fee for you to ship things and pick them up, so keep that in mind. But it's almost always going to be a better option than bringing them yourself. Hotels won't take like a lot of big boxes though, so also keep that in mind. But if you have smaller, dense things like charms or pins and you don't have like humongous boxes of them, those are also really good candidates for shipping to your hotel because you can put them into those USPS like flat rate boxes and just pay a flat rate to ship them to the hotel. So even if that box weighs like 30 pounds, it's still gonna cost you like, I don't know, $20 to ship it, which is very cheap, okay? But if you do that, I have had boxes explode in transit and I lost a lot of merch from from that. So if you do intend to ship like heavier, denser things, I would highly suggest you make sure you absolutely like mummify your box, completely make sure it's protected and won't explode or bust open because there is like I've had this happen to me multiple times, but it is extremely panic inducing to arrive at the hotel and then you get your stuff and it's all missing or it's half missing because it exploded in transit. So, we have all the things here like travel, plane, driving. I don't think I could really recommend taking like buses or trains to travel to conventions because first off, they're slow, they're prone to delays and stuff, and they may not be very accommodating for you to travel with a lot of luggage. So, um, you also want to like here I have like the merch production. These are like what I used to pay for like prints, stickers, charms, and stuff when I was starting out. And like I mentioned before, it's not necessarily a cost you have to pay like all right before the convention. These costs for like merch production can be spread out ahead of time. Um, you should definitely invest in making your booth setup look attractive because, people are glancing around and they look at things kind of quickly, right? So you want to make sure that things look clear and easy and attractive to grab their attention right away. So I think it's worth kind of investing a little bit more in your display supplies. Um, but of course, when you are starting out, you also want to make sure your display supplies are something you can travel with easily. So for a lot of people, this means like PVC pipes, photo stands, those plastic connecting grid cube things. I'm a pretty big fan of the grid cube things, especially if you reinforce them with stuff like zip ties and things. They also travel and pack pretty well. The only problem is that they can be a little heavy, so you definitely need to bring more luggage. And then, there's all the stuff like insurance, transaction fees, sales tax. When I say supplies, I'm also kind of referring to things that you might want to have like scissors, sticky notes, all that stuff, because you may not think you will want them, but you will want them. Like tape, sticky notes, scissors, all that stuff. Like office supplies, you will want them at your table, believe me. So, total, I would say you should probably, to be safe, budget maybe 1,500 to $2,000 for a beginner at a convention nowadays. It is a lot more expensive to do a convention nowadays than it used to be like, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago. I haven't been doing conventions for 10 years, but uh, the expectations and the amount of costs and professionalism and stuff people expect and also require, it's gotten a lot more expensive in the recent years. So this is kind of like my rough estimate for like intermediate. So this is like maybe you have a bigger table now. Maybe you make more stuff instead of just prints and charms and pins and stuff. Maybe you're making a couple of t-shirts or maybe a plushie or something, or if you have like a humongous like gallery of prints, charms, and pins. So I think at this point you might want to budget between like 2,500 to like $4,000 ish. You always want to include like emergency padding for things because you just you got to make sure you always have a little bit of wiggle room. So usually intermediate stage people can afford to fly out further, travel to more expensive places. Like you can bring more stuff, you can spend more on production and shipping. Some conventions offer like a pro artist spot where, the standard would be like a 6 foot table. And a pro spot might be an 8 foot table or it might even be a 10 foot space. For reference, most regular like exhibitor level vending spaces, like for dealers and stuff, those are like 10 by 10 spaces. So I've seen some cons, like MomoCon, for example, has like a pro section, and what was it called? Otakon has a pro section also, where you can buy bigger space at a higher price. Um, I think when you are at the intermediate level, you probably should start budgeting to bring helpers along or, have some help because things will get very overwhelming. And I stayed in the solo state of doing intermediate convention selling by myself for too long, honestly, and it was not good for me. So, all of these costs for like hotel, Airbnb, food, just saying you'll probably want to like double them if you do have helpers because you should be covering your helpers' food and like hotel and stuff at the minimum if you have helpers. Like if you cannot pay them, like I guess that's an entire different conversation entirely, but like if you are having helpers, you should be paying for their food and their hotel and their badge and stuff at the minimum. And at this point, like I did put like 1,000 to 2,000, but honestly, for the merch production and the shipping, this can really vary because, as I mentioned before, the merch can be reused, spread out over a longer period of time, sold online. And then for advanced, Makes sense. They shouldn't be paying to work for you. Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about this. Like, if someone is helping you at a convention, they are working, right? And at minimum, you should be covering these costs for them. I know that a lot of people kind of like, they get their friends and or like their partner or something to help them, and like at minimum, you should be covering the cost of them being there. And like, I don't know. I saw some people like they ask people to go help them at cons, but then they don't offer to pay for their food or their hotel or whatever, and I feel like that's not right. Okay, so for advanced, you might start to get into like bigger things like this. I think this is kind of where I'm at right now with like a lot of big apparel stuff, a lot of like very space consuming objects, items like backpacks, big jackets, plushies. Um, so obviously the merch production here, it pretty much scales infinitely. So I say $20,000 or more. It could be a lot less than that, could be anywhere in this range. Um, you definitely want helpers at this point. So you're gonna be wanting to pay for, their like doubling or tripling all of these things. You might also want to be paying for like more booth furnishings. Like if you want to add like racks or tables that you can rent from the convention center to your space, that's usually like another few $100s a piece. Um, or if you want like electricity or extra lighting or stuff, sometimes I do get extra tables because a lot of the time in a 10 by 10 space, they'll only give you like one table. And for my setup, I find it more optimal if I have like at least two tables because I have a lot of tabletop things like mannequins and stuff also. You might also start having to pay for things like material handling and shipping. So basically, what these are is if you have like big stuff you want to send to the convention, say like I have a pallet and I load up the pallet with merch, like the heavy stuff, like all the jackets, hoodies, bigger display supplies that obviously won't fit in my suitcases. I can have them shipped on a pallet directly to the convention center, or I can have them shipped to a holding warehouse that is close to the convention center, and then the convention center will have pallet from that holding warehouse sent to the con like on time for the event. Um, so this is a very expensive process. Renting from the con for extra furniture such as scan, you arrive early and commandeer an extra table and some chairs. Yeah, like sometimes I do that too, but sometimes I need really specific stuff like extra poles and stuff for me to hang like custom drapery and stuff on. Um, in certain booth layouts I've configured. But yeah, like if you rent stuff from the convention, it is so expensive. Like they want to charge you like $300 to give you like this folding like 4-foot table with no tablecloth. It makes me so sad because you could go to Costco and buy like a table for a fraction of that price and you get to keep the table. Yeah, and they want to charge you like $100 for like a chair, and the chair is like it sucks. I actually hate the convention chairs so much that I just bought like a fancy like folding camp stool thing and I just bring it with me because I hate the convention chairs. They're so uncomfortable and they make my back hurt. So yeah. I wish I could like opt out of the convention chairs and get a refund. That would be so nice. But yeah, so if you do like shipping material handling is basically the cost for them, like the labor to unload the pallet, move it to your table space, it's the labor of them forklifting all that stuff around. Um, and that's like a separate charge from shipping. And it is honestly Like, for a lot of people, this may not be worth it. Like, I often will pay a few $1,000s total for shipping and material handling both ways for like a pallet or two pallets from a convention, depending on, the distance of the convention to my house. And, packing a pallet it's a lot of work. Because, you have to get a pallet, you have to get like boxes and bins, you have to fill them, you have to stack them on the pallet, you have to like Tetris it so that it palletizes nicely, you have to wrap it, you have to schedule the pickup and everything, which is also an entire like process that is not super straightforward. But for me at this point, it's kind of necessary because if I only brought whatever fit in my suitcases, I could bring like maybe 30 hoodies. Maybe. And that's like being pretty generous. Like if I included my partner's luggage in that too, then I could bring like 30 hoodies, which is definitely not enough stock for a convention for me. Yeah, the folding stool thing. Actually, let me find the folding stool that I or later I'll link in my server the folding stool that I really like because it's like really comfy. Even though it doesn't look comfy, but it's really comfortable. And the logo looks really stupid. It looks like, well, it kind of looks like a pair of nuts with legs, but I think it's supposed to be a butt, but it definitely looks a little bit less butt-like and more nut-like. So, yeah, so maybe once you see like, oh, then doesn't it cost you like 10,000 or like more dollars to go to a convention if your costs are like this? Is it even worth it? So, like, it's, there, I'll get into that a little bit more in just a little bit because we start to enter this really complicated, not very straightforward formula of like the value of going to a convention and how it's not just your gross sales that matter at it. So for reference, like SakuraCon earlier this year, I brought two other helpers besides me, and I had two 10 by 10 booth spaces like linked together, and it cost me more than $10,000 to be at SakuraCon. So like, that obviously that's a big number. So where are the gains, right? But before we get into the gains, I want to give like a quick like supply essential list. Um, so you definitely want to have good signage. You should invest the time in or the money in making some nice looking signs because although like the sticky note signs are, serviceable, the nice looking signs really help add to your overall presentation, and they're typically easier for people to read than the sticky note signs. You want to have a ton of business cards. People used to be like super like stingy with their business cards because they're giving them out for free, but a business card costs like a few cents for you to make, okay? And the amount of like potential returns you get from someone taking your business card is like way more than a few cents worth. So don't be stingy about giving out your business cards. You should have a lot of them printed and then make sure you give them out liberally with people like purchases, let people take them. Like even if they're like, "Oh, I just collect business cards." That's fine. It's whatever. It's like 5 cents you're losing. I think if you get like too, you know, uh hung up over losing like 5 cents in business cards here and there, then you're already not in a good position. Sticky notes, tape, scissors, fanny pack. So there were there was a string of really serious thefts at conventions like a few years ago, and I guess it's happening again, where people get their cash stolen, like from the tabletop or under the table while they're vending. So I am here to say, do not use cash boxes. Do not use cash lock boxes ever. They are very easy to steal. They're not protecting your cash from anything. Because, all someone has to do is steal the whole box and then break it open later. So don't use cash boxes. Your money should always stay like on your physical body at all times. A lot of people use fanny packs now for this because, it makes it easier to do that. And that's also my recommendation. The point is, the money should stay on your body at all times because it's a lot harder for people to reach over and steal it from your person when you're wearing it. Um, Zip ties, these are super handy. Like I feel like people think, "Oh, I don't know what to use them for," but you will find a use for them. You also should invest in getting some little baggies to put people's purchases in. Like, I don't mean like, big baggies, unless you have like really big items where you think that might be worth it, but you should definitely invest in getting little bags to put purchases in because people don't want to be juggling like little handfuls of pins and charms and stuff. Like, people lose them easily, they fall into the bottom of their bag. And if you have little baggies to put people's purchases in, that's the added benefit of you can put a business card in there. And that's how people remember where they bought that pin from. Because a lot of time I buy stuff from people, Artist Alley, and they don't like put it together with a business card or branding or something, and then I have no idea where I bought it from. Like, there's no way I'm remembering exactly where this one pin or charm came from if there's no business card like attached to it. Zip ties are so useful. Yes. Hello, Dag. Dag is another artist friend with very good art. Um, so yeah, the bags don't have to be expensive. You can get like those little paper craft treat bags, like super cheap, and you can get them in like 100 to 200 packs or something. But I think that, providing a little bag for your small items and stuff, that goes a huge, long way. Because how are people going to like come back and buy more stuff from you if they don't remember where they got it from? Yeah, so you want to make sure that people can trace back to where they got the stuff from. This is really important. And then, of course, you want extra chargers and cables for your card readers. If you are gonna use stuff like photo stands, uh, for your display, this has been like a huge annoyance for other people and myself in Artist Alley, but make sure your photo stand's legs are not just like creating a humongous traffic situation behind the tables, because it it becomes like super hard to walk in and out of the aisles if everyone's got photo stand legs just like everywhere, okay? So you want to be really mindful of your neighbors and not making this horrible photo stand situation for other people. But, when you have these display things, there is a really big upfront cost to tabling with them because you have to buy them upfront, obviously, but you can reuse them a lot later. So, that's not going to be a recurring cost all the time unless you're just always breaking every single photo stand every show. Okay, so there's like some, I say how to save money here, but I guess it's more like how to be efficient with your money when you are planning for the convention. So, if you get an airline card and you fly for conventions a lot, you can get like free luggage checked with your airline card for like most of them, like Delta, Alaska, American. And this like really adds up. Like, I feel like people don't take advantage of this as much as they should. The airline card usually costs like, I don't know, $50 a year or something in membership fees, but every time you check luggage, if you check two luggages, that's like $70 to $80 each way. So, like, you pretty much already made up the cost of the airline card membership on like one flight. Hello, Hoya. Yeah, so get an airline card if you fly often. On that topic, I also really recommend that you have a business card that you use just for like business purchases, and don't put your personal purchases on it, because this way it makes your accounting and bookkeeping for your business expenses like way easier. So I try to put all of my business purchases on my business credit cards, and I don't pay for them in cash if possible, because if I pay for them in cash, then I have to, document all of those cash receipts, and that's a huge pain in the butt. So if you put all of your stuff like on business credit cards where you can easily keep track of everything and sort them, then you'll save yourself a lot of headache when you have to file like your taxes and stuff. And we did talk about business expenses just a little bit earlier. So all that stuff that I mentioned, like your flights, your hotel, your merch production, all of that, like your supplies, basically literally anything you paid for to do the convention, you can count that as a business expense. Is eating out during a con a business expense? It can be. So this is not professional tax advice, but um, to a degree, you can write off some of your like business travel food and stuff. You'll have to like look at exactly what the criteria for that is, but you can write off part of your business meals and stuff as a business expense. So you can't do it like 100%, but you can get some of it back. You can write off food if it's a business meal. It's just only deducted at 50% rate. Yeah, yeah, pretty much that. Um, People can get audited more easily over deducting excessive amounts of business meals. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to, you know, be excessive about it, I guess. And make sure you save your receipts and everything for all of these things, because in the event that you do get audited, you will want them. You should, like, I think I've said this a lot before in other situations, maybe not in this talk, but I want to stress again the importance of very, very clear accounting. I do my spreadsheets like daily or like every 2 days or something. You should be keeping really clear records of all of your business expenses. It's really important, okay? You will save yourself from having to pay more money at the end of the year, and you'll stop yourself from getting into like tax trouble. DIY reuse things for your display. So, you can make really cute like foam signboards and stuff. If you like, you just have to buy some like foam boards, and then you print out your large signs on like large printer paper, and then you can like glue them to the foam boards and then cut them out with like an X-Acto knife or something. This is a lot of time and effort, honestly, but if you don't have the funds for it and you really want to have some aesthetic signs, then there are cheap ways to DIY a lot of these things. Plan a lot with your options ahead. So, like, if you travel to a different city and you are caught out like super late and realize, oh no, I don't have anywhere to go eat, and the only places left are like these really expensive bars and stuff, and then so end up having to pay a lot more than you plan to for food. A lot of this you can kind of mitigate by before you go on your convention trip. Do some research and scope out all of, a list of options that you can have for you to like refer back to when you're actually like on site there. So that way, you can keep like, okay, I know I can go to this restaurant and it'll still be in my budget and it'll be fine. So that way you can kind of like prevent yourself from falling into these situations where you have unexpected costs. Um, if you're beginning, you should definitely start with local conventions if you can, because you'll just save so many costs. And also, local conventions, or local events, they can be like a lot smaller and more manageable for you to like feel out and not get like lost in. Okay, so what if you don't break even? What if I did not break even? Uh, that's okay actually. It's not necessarily like a total loss. I spent this entire time talking about like here's how you can break even, right? But um there's some non-tangible benefits other than just like the sales that you make to be gained. So, conventions are really, really good at helping you grow your audience and grab the attention of like new customers and stuff. And you also get a lot of like live, real feedback about what people are interested in and what they like or don't like about your work. And there's also like the kind of phenomenon of like people are excited to actually interact with like the maker and stuff that can make, you know, that can influence their choice to like continue following the rest of your work and stuff like online or something, or to look for you at the next convention. Um, and remember how I said like you should give out a lot of business cards? This is like one of those reasons. Uh, like I personally think that the people who benefit most from conventions are those who are still early to intermediate in like growing their presence. So, everyone kind of expects like, oh, so and so big person will definitely be at this convention, but they, they won't know that all these smaller people will be there until they actually go there, and then it's like a discovery process. And I think that if you're having a rough time, like getting more attention online for like your online store or something, going to conventions and like making your presence known there is like a really effective way to like, get more attention and expose yourself to more audiences so that, more people can find you. Because, like, especially at conventions, if someone buys something in Artist Alley and they start wearing it around, and other people will be like, oh, I really like that thing you got. And then they'll be like, oh, yeah, I bought it over here at this table at this con. Stuff spreads like really well with word of mouth that way at conventions or like, after the con, people will often post pictures of like the stuff that they bought at the con and they'll like tag the artist in it or something. Or they'll show off the things that they got that they really like. And, all of these are like really effective ways for you to get more exposure. You found someone at a con a couple months ago from their bag alone. Yeah. Yeah. So like even though if someone was like on the fence about like your work or following you to start with, the more they like see you pop up around, the more likely they are to like actually spend a little bit more time looking at your work and, considering it and stuff. And that's kind of like the same principle by which like advertisements on TV work. Like, you know, if people keep seeing the same thing over and over again, it kind of sticks with them, right? So, you like a convention is just a really good opportunity for you to like, put yourself in front of all of these people's eyes and continue putting yourself in that position. Um, so I also want to talk about like the diminishing returns of doing conventions because remember how we were at the like advanced cost breakdown page and I mentioned that it cost me more than $10,000 to go to SakuraCon. So at that point you're kind of like, well, is it even worth it to go to a convention? Like even if I even if I sell like I don't know, say $15,000, if my costs were like $10,000, was it worth like the $5,000 instead of just like selling stuff online? And so that's kind of a tricky question because things get exponentially more expensive the bigger you get because you have to pay for more of these things like shipping, hiring more people. Um, so technically, if I sell all this stuff online, which I do, like I pay a lot more to be at the convention versus just making that sale online. Like the bag that I sold for like $50 at the convention, if I minus all my costs, maybe I only made like less than $10 in profit off of it. But if I sold it online, maybe I would have made like $20 in profit off of it. So, like, in a way, it's actually more expensive for me to be at the convention than to just sell stuff on my store. Oh, thank you for subscribing. Um, but this doesn't quite apply the same way if you stick to smaller items or prints or things with like, much bigger margins, because like apparel and, bigger, bulkier items, truthfully, they have really bad margins compared to like prints, because prints you'll often, see them for sale for like $20, but the actual cost of printing them is extremely low. Most of the value of print is like in the time spent to design it. But so for like as you get bigger then, and if you make a lot of these like bulkier items like apparel, bags, plushies, things like that, then the value of going to the convention lies more in the less tangible things and the marketing. Because, like, even though, let's say, I have really steady online sales right now, like, right now, I'm in a position where if I did not go to conventions and I just did all of my income online, that would be viable for me. You know, I could still earn enough and be quite safe, quite happy. But the thing is, in the long term, I want to think about like my presence like over the course of multiple years. And in order to preserve like my presence and also continue getting like more audience members, I have to still go to a few conventions a year at least because of the marketing opportunity that I mentioned earlier. Um, So, like, if you already have ready, like, steady sales online, going to convention is less valuable on the sales front because, you're just paying a lot of money basically to be at the convention, which is where I'm at right now. But it's still valuable for me in regards to like, the exposure and the experience, I guess. People like the experience of being able to interact with the creator. Um, And also, if you start to show up at more conventions and you're like a regular at them, people will start to realize, oh, you're like at all of these conventions. And if you don't have like a number of new things every so often, your sales will fall because people will expect, you to have some new stuff and then they'll be disappointed if you don't have some new things. So, like, there is this balancing going on where you might start to hit a ceiling in what you can offer for like what you're putting in, like time-wise and cost-wise. And you might have to like adjust and change your goals depending on how that situation changes for you. Every convention is like a significant risk. Even though like I go into a convention sinking in like a lot of money for it, like there's still a risk that I might not come out like very positive or positive enough to make the effort worth it for me. So it'd be more valuable for those new to cons with lowish sales online to try out tabling. Um, so I think that people who are new to cons with lowish online sales, I think that cons are a really good opportunity for them if they want to like increase their online presence more. Like I think that's a pretty ideal place to be benefiting from doing conventions. But, of course it does depend on what your own long-term goals are for yourself because some people really don't care about their online sales or they don't want to deal with it. And for some of those people like convention tabling all the time is their end goal. But personally, I think that those who are new to cons with low online sales, like, benefit a lot more proportionally compared to, like, someone in my position. That's where you're at right now. You're slowly moving out of not just selling prints and stickers. Yeah. So as you slowly start moving into like selling stuff aside from just prints and stickers, you start having a lot more complications to like deal with. Okay. So some people are like, okay, well, what if I do like at convention specials and stuff to like boost sales? Like this always comes up every time I'm at a con. Like people are like saying, oh, I'll discount things on the last day, or are you doing any discounts on Sunday? Because it's like the last day of the con. But I don't do those. So, and the reason why is it's a disadvantage to me. So I do have like at con like discounts and bundles and stuff. Like the popular one for prints is like buy two get one free. Or if you buy a certain number of pins or charms, then you get, one free or like a discount for the bundle or something. So those are good because, it encourages more people to like buy things like on site and stuff. And some of those things are kind of difficult to implement in an online store and they're easier to do like on site. But I would encourage you guys to like plan your discounts and bundles ahead of time. And, you know, I personally would not recommend like making changes to your discounts on site just because of the situation. And part of that is because some people will feel like it's not fair if they bought something on day one and they bought it at full price, and then they find out day three you're selling it at a discount. Um, it's just, even though it's technically all your decision to like decide whether you want to make that discount or not, but it just doesn't cultivate good feelings with the audience. And so also, like I mentioned before, that it's already really expensive to be at the convention. And so having a like day three discount is not really doing you very many extra favors because it also will, like, if people start to think, like, oh, I'll just wait until day three, then they will all like postpone their purchases till day three. And you've kind of set a new standard for your price of like, oh, the value of my thing is actually the discounted price because people just had to wait for it, which is, I don't want you guys to devalue your work. Um, so another thing I get asked about a lot is like, oh, can I order it online and then pick it up at the con? And I don't do this for a lot of reasons. The first reason is that it's complicated, like keeping track of stuff, especially if you have helpers. You need to like keep a running list basically of pickups people need to do. There's a lot of potential for confusion and mess there. And like it just, the other reason is the bigger reason, which is that you are already paying like a lot to bring your stuff to the con for basically the opportunity for people to see the thing. And, if you are doing pickup at con for something like a jacket or something, then it's like you've just subsidized someone's shipping cost, but like at a humongously greater cost to yourself because of all the like fees for you to be at the con, like, the table fees, the travel fees, all of that stuff. It's basically a bigger loss than if you were to like ship it to them, honestly. So I don't do like pickup at con for that reason. This might be different if you have like prints or something, but still I personally am not sure I can like recommend doing that because you'll just be taking on a bigger liability for yourself and actually losing from it. So, alternatives I do recommend you can offer. Um, so you should do discounts for items that you already have a really good margin on, like prints and pins, like pins and prints. The cost to make them per piece is like really low. So you can afford to like do group bundle like sales and stuff like buy two get one free or buy five and get another one for free, something like that. You can also do con exclusive bonuses like, oh, if you purchase a certain amount, then you can get a free special like sticker with it or free con exclusive pin, something like that. If you are like smaller or at a slower con, another really good way to boost your like income for that con is to do like on-site commissions. I used to do a lot of these at cons when I was newer. I don't do them anymore because it's like way too busy and hectic now. But if you are like smaller, less recognized, have some more downtime, and you're just kind of waiting at your table, um, you can do like on-site commissions. You do have to kind of worry about doing on-site commissions though, in the sense that when you are paying attention to drawing, you can't be paying attention to like people browsing your table as easily. So I personally think those are better done if you have some help with someone to help, the people who are browsing or, watch your table, make sure people aren't stealing stuff or, if you're just like heads down drawing, you look a little bit unapproachable sometimes. So it can become a lot more stressful to like keep tabs on everything and also draw at the same time. But, at a smaller, slower con, I think it's really doable. On-site commissions sound so stressful. Yeah. The first time I did them was at the first anime expo I went to, and it was super stressful. And I continued doing them for a long time, but I can't do it anymore. Um, Another good thing for you to offer as like an at-con special is like gotcha, like mystery bags, mystery pins and stuff. But let's say you have like some old merch you're trying to get rid of and you're like, "Oh, no one likes this anymore. I don't like this anymore. I just want to get rid of it, but I don't want to throw it away." Don't don't just throw your trash into your grab bags. Especially if the merch you're trying to get rid of, if it doesn't match anything else on your table, don't do it. If it still has ties to like the rest of the content you're making now, like maybe you can mix it with, some newer stuff that you're making and put it in a grab bag, but do not fill your grab bags with stuff that is irrelevant that you're just trying to get rid of because people will kind of resent that. How many furry comms have I gotten? Um, well, I never did like any full like anthro furry commissions because I just felt like that wasn't like my area of expertise, and so I didn't think I could do a really good job with them. The most I've ever really done was just, like kimono mimi type of things, like people with like animal ears and tails and stuff. Also, some cons do have like rules against having like gotcha stuff because of like it being kind of gambling, so be careful. Okay, so also I see this happen to a lot of people. It's the big number trap. So let's say it's like day two, you're looking at your gross sales and you're like, oh my God, I sold like $4,000 of stuff. I made so much money. Let's go buy like a ton of stuff right now. But you have not actually made $4,000. You just sold $4,000, remember? We went over the difference between gross and net earlier. Um, So, my personal advice is to keep like a spreadsheet and like have it auto calculate your gains and losses with like your expenses and your earnings and stuff. when you fill in the fields in it so that you can see your numbers realistically, like on site. That way you also don't have to keep doing the math like over and over again. I'm a big fan of like just having a lot of spreadsheets. You should also keep neat inventory records and sales records. I really recommend doing this digitally instead of on paper because paper can get ruined, it can get forgotten easily. Um, you can lose the paper, all sorts of stuff can happen to the paper. If you're already using Square to take card payments, you can set up an inventory system in Square with items and stuff, and it'll track your inventory. It'll give you these neat like sales reports and stuff. It'll give you like breakdowns. Um, you don't have to like calculate and do the math and stuff. It's great. And I personally like most people are using Square for their card readers anyway. I personally really recommend setting up your inventory system in Square for tracking and accounting purposes. I also track all of my cash transactions in Square so that I can keep like accurate inventory counts and also just like accurate sales numbers so I can file my taxes correctly. The big number trap still gets you every time. It's so tempting, the big number trap. Like I look at my numbers and I'm like, "Ooh, I made this much money. I can go like spend like $300 in Artist Alley right now." It's so tempting, but it's so easy to fall into, but it's a lie. Do I have Excel suggestions for accounting like templates? I don't personally have like templates made up. Maybe later I can think about making one and like posting it to share. But like it's not like super hard for you to like set the field to be like, oh, just add up all of these and then subtract all of these. But maybe later if I have more time I can put out a template. But even if you don't do an Excel spreadsheet, I do really recommend like if you're using Square already to take card payments, then to set up an inventory system in there because it'll give you like a breakdown like daily of like here's how many of this item you sold and like here's where your peak sales times were and like this is how much you had to spend on fees. You can also choose to add sales tax when you take card payments in Square. So it'll calculate sales tax and stuff for you, and then you can charge it along with the rest of the transaction. So it's really convenient. Numbers are so hard. Yeah. I thought I was gonna be done with math when I graduated college. I was not done with math. I do math every day. There's no escaping math. I hate it. Let's see. Do you have your inventory tied into your online store with Square? I do, yes. So, my online store is hosted with the thing that Square has. Like it's an integration with Weebly basically. So my online store inventory is pulled from the same place as my convention inventory. And you can also set multiple locations. This is like getting into technical stuff, but you can set multiple locations. So you can separate what you intend to have at the con from what you intend to have like at home for your online store. So it's just really convenient. You can keep all your metrics in one place, which if you start to sell like a big variety of stuff and you sell pretty consistently, then I found this is like it's necessary for me. Like otherwise it would just be so much extra work to like collate all of this data. Does Square automatically do your tax for you? No, it does not do your taxes for you, but you can have it set so that it will charge sales tax onto the transaction. And then it'll basically it'll collect the sales tax for you. And then you yourself have to file the sales tax and submit that money to the government. Usually you can either do that like online or like you have to fill out a check and stuff and mail in the check. You have Shopify, so you have to figure out how to add Square and do it now. Oh yeah, like I don't Honestly, I think my one of my biggest criticisms of Square though is that it just doesn't integrate with a lot of other stuff. The ecosystem for it is a little bit closed, which is my biggest criticism. But for me, it was the solution that made the most sense. For someone who was with like a much less complicated inventory, I could see like it still working if you still have to like just copy your numbers over into Shopify and stuff. But I'm not super familiar with Shopify, so I can't speak too much on that. It's always the tax collecting sales tax numbers that sort of trips you up. Yeah, it's like it is intimidating at first, like all of the sales tax and collecting and remitting stuff, but once you do it enough times, you kind of get a feel for how it generally works, and you can kind of cross apply a little. Yeah, I wish it would do my taxes for me too. Oh, Goose. Hello, Kieran. Okay. Um, Goose, I forgot to turn that off, but we can be a goose. We can be a goose for now. Yes, honk. The worst part about running your own business is running your own business. True. People are always like, "Oh, running your own business must be like nice because you can like choose your own hours and stuff." Like, I work 7 hours, not seven. I work seven days a week, many more than 7 hours a day. Let's see. I think I missed a comment earlier. You broke the rules, redeeming goose. You're a rebel. It's okay. I can be a goose just for you. Um, let's see. What was I talking about again? Oh, right. So like the sales tax and stuff with Square. So another thing is like I mentioned before that you're supposed to um submit your sales tax based off of your gross sales, which includes your cash sales, which, you know, I you're supposed to report your cash sales, but you're thinking, "Oh, but collecting sales tax on cash sales is a pain in the butt because that's coins and stuff, right?" But so honestly, what I do is I just kind of eat the cost because I don't want to like charge people and be like, "Oh, okay, that's $5 and like 73 cents." Like I don't want to deal with coins. So honestly, I'm just like, "Okay, that's $5," but then I just eat the cost of paying the sales tax on that myself when I remit it. Run a business and you too can have the joy of managing customer expectations. Oh my God, yeah. Ugh, the customer service. That's the other big oof. Like, I don't know. I feel like I get a lot more customer service problems online than I do like at conventions, but I have definitely had at con experiences. Eating the cost also hurts. Yeah, it does hurt, but also I have deemed to myself that it's not worth me going through the extra complications and headache of trying to like add on the sales tax to the cash. And honestly speaking, I hate walking around with cash at conventions because I'm like paranoid that someone's gonna like mug me or something. So, uh, honestly, if people are gonna buy stuff from me at cons, I prefer if they use their card anyway. And I think that most people are kind of moving the card regardless because if I look at my breakdowns of like card to cash, like percentage from the last few cons, like 70% of my transactions were with card and like 30 cash or something. So honestly, that's better for me because I also hate going to the bank after the convention and depositing my money at the bank because I walk up to the counter and they're like, "Hi, how can I help you?" And I'm like, "I have a deposit to make." And they think I'm gonna deposit like, I don't know, $200. And then I just like reach into my bag and hand them this like wad of 20s and I'm like, "Yes, I would like to deposit like $4,000, please." And then it's just like, I don't know. I don't it feels kind of like weird to me. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. So, I would just personally, I don't like dealing with cash. Please just pay me with cards. I'll eat the card transaction fees. I can deal with paying like 4% on each transaction. It's okay. All of these costs where I'm like, I could dodge this cost and save money if I did this other thing, but if I just pay it, then that's like I'm paying for my mental health. So all of these extra costs I have justified to myself as they're just my mental health costs, and to me that feels acceptable. Everyone, just has a drawer full of cash and they just don't report it or deposit it. I also like, I don't know, I feel so uneasy dealing with large amounts of cash. I'm like, please just pay me with a card. I just don't want to deal with cash. It smells, it's wet. People give me wet bills. I hate it. I don't want to take the wet bills and bring them to the bank. It's horrible. Don't make me carry the wet bills. I don't want to hold on to them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to touch them. Okay, let me drink some water because I forgot to drink my water. Okay, Goose is hydrated. How did I transition to making bigger items? You've seen some people take on loans or do Kickstarters. Do I recommend anything? What did I do for my apparel? Oh, okay. So, I think, well, I started with making a few t-shirts and that felt a lot more doable to me because for t-shirts, I was like, okay, I can throw a few $100s at it and that feels, doable. But when I started making like bigger items, I thought about doing a Kickstarter, but I've seen like, I don't know, I've seen a lot of Kickstarter disasters. And there's definitely successes, but I did not want to deal with Kickstarter fees and I didn't want to deal with the kind of like complications that can come with shipping with Kickstarter and like customer service on Kickstarter. And at that point, I thankfully already had like a solid enough following that I feel like there was a relatively high trust level in me because people's trust level in you is so important with this. If you don't have like people's trust when you're selling stuff as a convention artist or like online, you're like dead in the water. So, I was able to just do it by taking pre-orders. So, um, I do want to say that if you are going to do a big project, uh, like I did make sure I had the financial means to basically eat the entire cost if I needed to. Like obviously that would not put me in a great place, but um before making like my first big like apparel project with like a completely custom patterned like hoodie and stuff, I did like save up for a while beforehand and be like, okay, well, I can afford to throw like what, $10,000 at this and, you know, obviously that will take like all of my money, but I could afford to um foot the entire bill if I needed to in case of disaster. So I did go and have the sample made and then I just ran pre-orders. But the way I did pre-orders, which is also how I do it now, which is like there's a uncapped period where people can just place orders and then there's no cap to how many I'm gonna produce in that time period. And then after a certain date, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna cap it. So I'm gonna put in the production order. And the production order was gonna be like the total that was pre-ordered plus like 5 extra pieces of each size in case of defects. And then I also added another like certain quantity for what I planned to have available on the store online, and also um so that people could continue to pre-order it. So that ended up being like the entire amount that people gave to me for pre-orders. I used that entire amount for ordering the production. So at that point, when I placed the production order and capped the pre-orders, then um I basically had no like profit. But I left the pre-orders open, but I said, okay, so the uncapped period is over, but you can still pre-order now. It's just, you know, it's going to be from a limited stock now. So you can still order it. It's just, it's going to be limited now in numbers. So people could still continue to like trickle in orders if they missed the uncapped period, but it would come in slowly, but it would help me like recoup some of the cost of spending the entire like pre-order period funds like to produce things. How do you figure out how much extra inventory you should order compared to pre-orders? Like if I get 100 or 1000 pre-orders, how many extra do I order? So it kind of depends on if I have upcoming conventions also, because I try to keep some of these things with like my convention schedules in mind, because I know whenever I go to a convention, I'm gonna need a lot more stock. And also right after the convention, the stuff that people saw at the con, they're going to want to order it online too. So I have to account for that. So I actually usually end up like if I got 100 pre-orders for something, if I'm just gonna sell it online, then I might order like 150 or 175. If I have conventions to account for too, I might order like 250 of that thing. And like part of this is I also have to keep in mind like how much space that takes up and like how much physical labor I can afford to put into it, because it's like still pretty much just me and my partner who move all this stuff around and like have to pack things and transport all that stuff. So, yeah, generally, I guess between 150% and like 250% is like where I would be ordering for pre-orders. It's always like a little bit of a risk. Um, Like there's also some things like if I personally have this feeling, like just the hunch that like, oh, this is gonna be a popular item, then I'll order more of it. And like if it was like something where I knew it was gonna be harder to sell at a con, like for example, the journal covers that I had, like I knew that was gonna be something that's harder to sell in person versus online, then I kind of just went with the minimum order for that because I was like, well, it's not gonna it's not gonna perform the same at a convention as it would like online. You always wondered that. Yeah, I mean, just 'cause I use like that rough formula for myself, like it will really depend for other people. Like I'm sure you all know that already, but like I did say there's a lot of like variables that will change a lot of things for other people. So, um I would like I tend to oops, accidentally clicked off the tab. I tend to over prepare for things, but that's also because I kind of have the means to over prepare for things. And uh like if that's not within your means, I would definitely stay within whatever you can like afford to do, because like I've seen a lot of people fall into this position where they run like a big project and they do a Kickstarter or a pre-order for it, and then they use the funds, they start the production, there's a problem, they can't fulfill it, And then they also are all out of all of the money that they collected for producing it. And then they're stuck. They can't refund people. They can't produce more of the thing or find another manufacturer. So, uh, I would like personally, I would say I would recommend like having at least enough money like that you can do out of pocket yourself to fund the project, like at least maybe 70% of it. Like 50 to 70% at minimum you could like do for funding the project out of pocket for yourself because if you get into a problem, you need to have like something to fall back on in case. You wanted to get into enamel pins and you're just scared to start pre-orders, you think. Oh, well, okay. So I think with enamel pins, like people have like expectations about the process and it's a pretty well established like thing now. Like, people kind of know what to expect and the process for making enamel pins is pretty straightforward now compared to how it used to be. So, like obviously, I don't know your exact situation, but I am personally of the opinion that you should be able to safely run pre-orders for enamel pins, especially because the margin on enamel pins is very good. Like you can make back your production costs for enamel pins if you sell like, I don't know, 20. And usually the minimum order quantity is like maybe 100, right? So, I think like personally, I think it's one of the safer things to run pre-orders for and be successful with. How did it used to be? People used to be very like more guarded about making enamel pins and how to do it and stuff, which was very understandable, by the way. But because the process and like knowledge of like, oh, this is how you set up your files, this is how you talk to the manufacturer for it, all of that used to be a lot less well known. So like the process of doing pre-orders and stuff for it and finding trustworthy manufacturers for it was um a lot more difficult and people were a lot more wary of doing pre-orders and stuff for enamel pins back then. Yours are pin-up enamel pins, so they're a little more expensive. So you were a little more worried on return on investment, but this convo eased your mind a bit. Yeah. I mean, like, I can't say for sure, obviously, but uh, my opinion is that enamel pins are one of the safer things to do pre-orders on. And like if you can afford to like foot the cost and take most of the risk yourself, then you should be okay. Like I think most people already know, but every time you do a project like this, sorry, I was like yawning while every time you do like a big project, you kind of have to be like mentally prepared for like I might lose like $2,000 on this or something or $500, whatever. And you know, it is rough, but I think that doing pre-orders on enamel pins is a lot safer than say like if you wanted to do apparel pre-orders. Okay, let me take off my hoodie. It is kind of warm in here now. It's because I'm running VTube Studio. VTube Studio always warms up the room. Okay, you saw my jackets at TwitchCon while saying hi to Ugu and Cows. Oh, sorry I missed you if you were trying to say hi. Oops. It was very busy at TwitchCon. Yes, I'm Goose. Okay, so I think I covered all of the main stuff that I wanted to like brain vomit out. So I guess if people have other questions, we can do like Q&A. Hope I had fun at TwitchCon. Yes, I mean TwitchCon was a wild time, but I did ultimately have a lot of fun with my friends there. Like the big like plus point of TwitchCon for me was definitely the people. Yes, hello to Leg Bun. Yes, I feel like I kind of rambled a lot about a lot of things, but I hope I covered a lot of like the stuff that people were most wanting to hear. I did another talk on like business artist alley stuff before, but um so I didn't go into some of the things that I talked about there, but this was more focused on like the convention tabling experience. You heard a lot of people got sick. Oh, yeah, thankfully I did not get sick. Thank God. So I'm fine. TwitchCon was a wild ride from the artist alley. Oh, yeah. It was not a very smooth like setup, load in, whatever, and there was a number of like things that made it more difficult. But, it was definitely not the worst con I've ever done. So you're curious for online sales, how often do I ship things out? Typically I do batches like every two-ish, sometimes every 3 days, depending on like the volume of orders and stuff or like what else I have going on. So typically it's like every 2 to 3 days ish. If it's like a time when I'm trying to get a bunch of pre-orders out, then I might be doing it like every day. But yeah, I try to make like the turnaround time like not super long if I can. But also I don't want to be like going to the post office every single day for like one package a day. Um, let's see. How do I base the amount to charge for shipping? Like going a dollar or two above what the quote on pirate ship is. Um, yeah, so like I guess it depends on how much you're spending on your shipping supplies to start with. Like say like I might spend like 75 cents each on a mailer. Um, so I have like my shipping calculated by like weight tiers actually for Square. So like it'll add up the entire weight and then it'll fit it into like a shipping tier that I already set up. I try to only like make the shipping like a maybe a dollar above or $2 above as you mentioned, whatever the quoted price was for something if I can, because one of the main like pain points for people when they're ordering stuff online is seeing a high shipping cost. So if I can like roll that shipping cost into a different part of the price, like into the product price instead of the shipping price, I think it looks easier for people to swallow that way. So, maybe like I try to maybe make the product price a tiny bit higher instead of like displaying the full shipping cost if I can. But also shipping costs are just kind of absurd right now, so yeah, it's like tricky, but I try to make them visibly as low as I can. And people tend to get like much more upset about seeing a higher shipping cost than they do a higher like product cost. Um, Square does not actually have a plugin to integrate with Pirate Ship, so I have to use their other thing, which is Shippo, which also like does this whole thing where it like marks the order and sends an email to the customer for me with like the tracking number and stuff. But the rates are like pretty similar to Pirate Ship anyway, so What are some anime cons I can recommend applying to as a vendor that's in the South or West Coast? Uh, so I haven't really done anything in the South. I keep meaning to look at Texas, but the West Coast, there's my favorite, probably like maybe my favorite con ever, which is actually my local one, which is Kumori Con in Portland. And actually, I will be at it like in a couple of weeks, but it is one of my favorite cons to do. I think the vibes are nice. The staff has always been like really nice to like artist alley, especially and vendors, and uh, I've just always had like a good time with them. I'm not being biased just because it's local to me, but like I feel like they like have all of this better support for vendors and artists compared to some other cons. Like they give out an info packet with like nearby pharmacies, groceries, like food and stuff. They have like emergency stuff set up, and they have staff walking around regularly who you can ask to help you like watch your space if you just need to go to the bathroom or something really quick. And so, I just feel like they're like the staff support for vendors and artist alley is just really nice there. Um, let's see. Like Fanime is really hype and like everyone is like hyped about Fanime, but the experience I feel like can be a little chaotic there. Like sales are always good, but also things are very saturated there because it's in the San Jose area and there's a lot of artists in the San Jose area. That's the other West Coast. I really liked SakuraCon. It was my first time doing SakuraCon earlier this year, but I was in the vendors area, not Artist Alley. Um, I feel like they recently did like a reorganization of how they do Artist Alley and vending and stuff, and I think that kind of made some things not as ideal in the process, but overall it was still a really good con for me. I didn't have any like real problems with it, and people were generally like pretty nice. I know that California has a lot of like smaller events and stuff, like local markets, pop-ups, and things like that, but I haven't really done them because they're not local to me. Oops, okay, there's a lot of comments now. Let me see. Um, yes, I see everybody loves Kumori-con. Okay. Can I elaborate on my helpers? How did I find them? How many do I have on staff? Have any of my helpers caused problems and how do I resolve them? Have I ever had to deny or fire a helper? Okay, yeah. So most of my helpers are actually like friends or like acquaintances that I trust, and I decided to be like, "Hey, are you willing to like come and help me at this convention? I will pay you for your time, and also I'll pay for like your flights, your travel, your hotel, your food, whatever, like all of it." Um, so I mean, I don't really think I have reached out specifically to like hire people outside of the circle of people that I already kind of personally knew very much. So I can't really provide like info on that. But since they will be handling a lot of money for you, I think it is kind of important that you know, go with someone that you trust and you feel like, solid with. But I also have learned like it is really important that you get people that are social and personable enough to like handle this. And also, they have to understand and match the vibe of like what your like the image you have with your products and your merch and stuff. Because I did have some helpers before that were like socially, they were just, I mean, I care about them very much as people, but socially they were just like not attuned, you know, to like the image that I was like trying to match for like the stuff I was selling. And like some people were just like they didn't want to engage, they would panic, or they would just kind of like keep their head down the whole time instead of wanting to talk to people. And like it's not like I want people to like call out to customers and be like, "Hey, come over here and buy this," but I need them to be like, you know, willing to engage with people if someone is interested and not just hide away, right? Um, how many do I typically have like on staff? So for like a regular like medium-sized convention, I think I can have like just one other helper with me or maybe like two. I usually like I'm pretty good at sitting there and handling the booth for a lot of hours by myself. So I can get away with having just one helper a lot of the time. For bigger conventions or like when I had like bigger spaces like at SakuraCon or, you know, other like bigger cons of that scale, I needed at least two helpers. And for AX, I had a total of like six plus, like rotating in and out. Basically, we had like five people working at a time at like at the same time at the table at all times at AX. Have any of my helpers caused problems? Indirectly, like I had a helper kind of bully the other helper that I was with at the time at a convention once. And this helper, like the bullying one, he like they also just kind of kept wanting to do things their way and like disregarding everything that like we were trying to tell them. And that was like kind of super grating on my nerves. So I didn't like fire them, but I did be like, you know, if you want to be here helping, and if you know, if you want to be here, I need you to like actually be helping the right way and not just like doing whatever the heck you were wanting to do by yourself. For the most part, uh, like I didn't like tell them you're never helping me again. But like I did kind of be like, "Oh, well, I don't think I need your help next time, sorry." I didn't ever like fire anyone on site. I just never brought them back again. But I did make sure like every time I had an issue with a helper, especially if they were like causing problems with the other people helping at the booth, then I did like make sure to talk about it to them privately and be like, you know, the way that you were like acting and like talking was you know, it's causing problems. I'm kind of confrontational about things like that and you know, so I wasn't like mean about it or anything, but also I just wasn't gonna ghost them. I was like, you know, this was a problem, so we can't be doing that. Um, Another question. Do I know if there's a thing where artists ask for table mates for cons? You've been wanting to table with someone, but you're not sure what keywords to look up. Oh, like sharing a table? I don't know if there's any like socially popular way to search for it like that. I think most people who like share tables for cons are like friends with each other already with like other artists. Um, I know that some cons may let you just buy like half of a table space, so like 3 feet. I think KomoriCon had something like that in before where they would let you just like buy 3 feet of table space or something. So I'm sorry, I don't have more specific information on that, but um, yeah, you might just have to look for a con where you can like buy a smaller amount of space, or you might have to see if you can like grab another artist friend or something. Okay, for South, you went to Acon and the staff were ultra nice. I heard like good things about Akon. I have been meaning to look at like Texas conventions, but I just haven't. I meant to do less conventions this year because I was just so burnt out from last year, but you know, this was supposed to be a chill year and it was not very chill. Do I have a YouTube for posting Twitch VODs? You would love to rewatch the advice for reference in the future. Yes. Oh God, if you scroll up, sorry. If you scroll up a little bit to where Nightbot posted the cover of Error, that's actually the same YouTube channel I posted a previous VOD about this type of stuff on. I don't um I don't post VODs very often on there, mostly because I just forget. But if it's for stuff like this, then I will post VODs on there like after the fact. Chill year for 2024. I hope so, because like the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna chill and like, not be too ambitious with my projects, and I will do less cons, and everything will be great, and I will take my time and maybe, build up my savings and hopefully try to buy a house sometime. But then obviously none of that happened because I just had so many problems. Like I think a lot of you guys are aware of the moldy jacket issue I had, and then the Nyan packs that all came the wrong colors and were confiscated by UPS and all of that stuff. I feel like there was just so much of it that like if I talk about it, people don't even know which thing I'm talking about anymore because there were too many. Yeah. So if people did not know, um, the jacket situation was that I ordered like big order of tech jackets, and it was like the biggest order I had ever done in manufacturing. And when they arrived, like it was every single one of them had like mold. It was like almost 1,000 jackets, and every single one of them had like mildew in it. And I was like, oh well, obviously I can't send those out. Yeah, I was like kind of freaking out because like it was $40,000 ish in manufacturing. Did my manufacturer handle it well? Yes, actually they were so great about the whole thing because um like I told them like I opened it and like everything's molded. Like I was like, oh, I don't know what to do about this. Everything is molded. And they're like immediately the first thing that they said was like, "Oh my God, um, okay, we'll do our best to work with you to fix this. Um, we will remake all of the jackets and stuff, and but we need your help with like documenting the damage and stuff so we can file insurance and all that." But it was an ordeal. I happen to have like a really good relationship with that manufacturer in particular. Like, um, I stress this like all the time on Twitter, but like you guys, it's really important to try to like maintain good relationships with your manufacturers and, treat them like actual people. Because I like a lot of people who work with international manufacturers kind of like dehumanize them and stuff. Especially if like they're Chinese or something, and then they're like, oh, just China manufacturers. But like, they're just a lot, like most of the time, like 99% of the time, they're just also people who are just working their job. And I feel like if you put in just a little bit more effort to, treat them more like equal human business partner people that you're working with, then it can really go a long way with like maintaining a good relationship with them. So, yeah, this particular one I also had a really strong relationship with, and like because I put in so many orders with them. So, thankfully, they were really accommodating about it. Yes, hold on. I will be right back. I need to grab more water. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Control S, yes, save. Oh, my goose eyes are getting all wonky. Oh, hello, clickbait. Yes, hello, clickbait. Okay, I think I got all of the questions that people had asked so far. So, last call for questions, I guess, before we wrap up for today. I woke up like an hour ago, rip work schedule, felt that. Every time I come back from a con, it's like my sleep schedule is just completely ruined for many days. Let's see. Oh, while we're on the topic of conventions, uh, so in a few weeks, I mentioned I'll be at KomoriCon, right? But while I'm at KomoriCon, Yuhua, my partner, will be at Anime NYC for me, and he'll be manning the booth there for me. The nice part about having exhibitor spots is that you can have like proxies go sell for you, which is you usually cannot do that with artist alleys. I have rice cooking. Oh, thank you for getting me rice. Wait, it's not my birthday. It's not my birthday until February. One day you hope to be on that proxy level. Yeah, I hope so too. Hope you get it because like it's like so much nicer being able to schedule conventions when you don't have to worry about like conflicting events and stuff. Like, well, honestly, if KomoriCon and Anime NYC did not have conflicting dates, I would have gone to both of them. Is Yuha going to be there by himself? No, he's gonna be there with two of my other friends, so it's gonna be three people staffing that booth total, but they're all boys. I hope everyone is nice to them. It's gonna be like the first like big convention that I have a booth at where I won't personally be at, so I'm kind of nervous actually. Kind of anxious a little bit about not being like on site to handle things because there's always like little stuff that has to be taken care of or like questions, but at the same time, Yuha's like been around the operations enough that he can make really good calls about things, so it should be fine. Less anxiety inducing, not being at whim of waiting on cons to pick you. Oh God, yeah. So like applying for exhibitor spots is like really different from applying for artist alleys. And I mean, it's like sometimes it's kind of a first come, first serve, sometimes it's not. But like the nice part is usually you know way ahead of the artist alley whether or not you get in. And it's usually easier to secure a spot for yourself if you've already vended at that event before, because a lot of them will let you rebuy your spots. So on that front, it's a lot less anxiety inducing, yeah. The boys, TM, made you hot. Yeah. I mean, we have to find his maid outfit because the maid outfit he wore for Halloween yesterday was actually mine. We couldn't find his, so we put mine on him and it was a little bit small, but still serviceable. Hopefully we can find his before the next convention. What are good recommendations for screen print apparel? Like recommendations for printers? Because let's see. I used to use like when I was in college, I used to use underground prints, but if you can, I highly suggest like trying to find a local place that does t-shirt printing and stuff because first off, it's a good opportunity to like form a good working relationship with them, which is very valuable, I've learned. And then secondly, sometimes you can get better like price breaks, and sometimes they're more willing to like accommodate more specific like requests and stuff you have, like printing on certain locations or certain types of printing. So, like one of the places I also use is like Big Frog. I think they're like a franchise and they have like a few different locations and stuff. I've also heard from another friend that Terminus Teas was like they liked them a lot. But yeah, I would definitely recommend like looking for a local shop first because there's a lot of benefits. Like also with the local shop, you can often like go in and like they'll have a lot of the popular blanks on hand that you can like look at yourself so you can see like how the material feels and how like the cut is and stuff and how the colors look in real life for like the blanks. Or they might have samples of like this is how this type of printing looks on this type of blank and this material. So, like, usually the local shops are really accommodating if you want to like ask more about like the blanks, the process, and all that. Does my local do sample prints? Actually, I don't know. I don't know actually like sample prints of your design. I don't think they do of like screen print because of the amount of like setup and stuff involved in screen printing. But um they do have like shirts pre-printed on hand with like their entire range of like, oh, these are all the materials we do. These like vinyl, screen print, DTG and stuff, and this is how these colors will show up on light shirts and dark shirts and colored shirts. Which I mean, I think it's still worth going in to look at those things, especially if you're like newer to screen printing. Yeah, basically, I've just kind of accepted you need to like minimum order quantity with like anything. Or it's like if you wanted to do just like one piece of something, the cost of doing the one piece would just not be worth it. Your Halloween outfit was Attack on Titan Scout and the jacket you got was too small and tight. See, everybody was wearing stuff that was too small and tight but doable. One piece joke. Yeah, I knew I was kind of asking for it when I said one piece. I was like, someone's gonna say one piece joke. Yes, so Yuval will be at Anime NYC and I will be at KumoriCon. I will have one other helper with me at KumoriCon, but Anime NYC is the bigger convention, so that's why he gets two helpers. You went to a restaurant on Halloween. One of the waiters was dressed up as Luffy. Oh yeah, I remember you mentioned that before. Okay, let's see. Oop, I accidentally clicked. Bleh, accidentally clicked over to Twitter. So, if um, if nobody has any more questions, then we can be wrapping up soon. Looking forward to seeing my booth at ANYC. You'll be in the vendor hall for the first time as well. Nervous. Yeah, actually, my booth at Anime NYC is the first time I'll have an exhibitor booth at that con. Last year and the previous year, I had an artist alley booth. I'm like in this position right now where I'm like transitioning fully from doing artist alley to doing exhibitors instead because I think I just have reached this point where there just simply is not enough space for me at the artist alley table and not enough like accommodations for like the amount of stuff I have. So I just like if I can't get a vendor's booth at a con now, I'm just not gonna go for artist alley at it probably. There's just not enough space. You also usually cannot use like pallet shipping and material handling and stuff if you do artist alley at conventions, and that's like a pretty big thing for me now. So Anime NYC is like super super busy and packed though, so I have a fair amount of confidence it should be okay. But I do feel like when you have a vendor's booth at a con instead of a artist alley booth, people do have like different expectations and like they can start treating you as more like, "Oh, you must be like a corporation." When it's like, "No, I'm still just one person, but just in the bigger space now, but I'm not a corporation or anything." You're shipping like 20 boxes to a FedEx location to be held and then hand carrying it over. Oof, good luck. Oh my God. I specifically remember the hand carrying into the convention center for Anime NYC is it's not easy. Basically anything in like that area of like New York, I feel like is just, contentious. Anime NYC hand carry is the worst. Yes, it was even me just like trying to wheel in my luggage that I wheeled over from like the hotel I was staying at before, it was an ordeal. I like on top of that, like they set up the like entrances and queues and stuff in such a way at the Javits Convention Center that it's like really confusing. Can't afford their insane material handling fees. $3 a pound. One of your board games is $8. Yeah, like the material handling fee at that convention center is like way higher than some other cons I've been to, and I'm like I was considering shipping like two pallets to Anime NYC because the con is so like busy, but remember my whole breakdown earlier of like no diminishing returns? Like the $3 a pound of material handling kind of has me like Just did New York Comic Con. It was just as bad as you remember it. I heard New York Comic Con was like a really good con though. I don't have like a super great experience with Comic Cons historically compared to anime conventions, but also I know that, my stuff is not really the same target audience as Comic Cons. So, and I know that there's like a different social culture there, so You always wonder how a lot of artists online manage to set up their own online stores versus just using something like Etsy. Well, most of the time, the only real advantage Etsy is offering here compared to using like Shopify or something else is that Etsy has its own like marketplace to help advertise for you in, so people can look up your stuff in it. That's really the only big like thing that you're gaining with Etsy. So if you have like a solid online following on other social media where you can direct them to your online store, you don't need Etsy. You went to NYCC. Best-selling show to date was great for you since you also got client work during those cons. Ooh, great. Yes. I know that Comic Cons are kind of bigger on the like networking aspect than anime conventions. I always get like people approaching me at anime cons for like uh networking deals and stuff, and like I would say like most of them, like 90% of them just, they fall through the cracks. Or they were just not really the kind of thing I'm looking for, you know? You want a table at Fitness Expo? What do people even have at Fitness Expo? Fitness expos? Yeah, I know that like the social culture at Comic Cons is a little different from anime conventions. I didn't have a very good experience at the last few Comic Cons I went to, but also they weren't like Emerald City and they weren't New York Comic Con. So maybe it was just like a smaller convention thing, who knows? Your art leans more comic. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, like I also just feel like at Comic Cons a lot of the time it's more of a like a spectacle for people to walk through and a little bit less of a like let's go buy things kind of thing. And I mean, not trying to throw shade, but also I definitely got like a lot more like super weird socially defunct people approaching me at Comic Cons versus anime conventions. I'm not trying to like I'm not trying to like be overly negative, but the proportion was staggering, honestly. Lots of fitness influencer protein powders. Oh, I see. Was the floor ramen a Comic Con? No, the floor ramen was at an anime convention, but it was that was a special case. There was like the last Comic Con I went to was Rose City Comic Con, which was, I heard it was supposed to be kind of a big deal, and it was local to me. And I was like, okay, well, seems solid. It's also run by the same organization that handles Anime NYC. So I was like, okay, seems solid. Uh, it was not solid. And also the worst case I had there was this guy that approached me and held me and my table partner like conversationally hostage for 25 whole minutes while he kept talking about like he just kept rambling about his desire to make um what was it? Life-size Opie mouse pads. Like, and then he just was like wanted to talk about manufacturing life-size Opie mouse pads for some reason. But every time I was like, "Oh, uh-huh, yeah, yeah, uh-huh." And it was like extra weird because he maintained eye contact with my table helper the entire time, but he was directing all of his words at me. And my table helper did not say a single word in that entire like 25 minutes that he was there. And then like at the end of it, he like held out this business card dispenser thing. And then he just kind of held it out and I stared at it because I was like scared. And then he was like, take one. And I was like, oh, okay. So I pulled one out and it was just a regular like photography business card. And then, he was just kind of being super weird this entire time. And then he was like, I'm having a panel tomorrow talking about what was it? Cosplay safety. And then it was like, I guess the panel was supposed to be about him talking about like being respectful when you take photos of cosplayers and not being like weird and creepy. And then he was like, yeah, a lot of creeps out there. And I was like, I don't know. That doesn't sound very convincing after you just like monologued at me for 25 minutes about your desire to make life-size Opie mouse pads. Oh, you got that guy too. Oh no. Oh no. Your boyfriend was there and it made the interaction quicker. Yeah. It was just me and like my other like table partner who, is feminine presenting and we were just like conversationally held in purgatory for a whole like 25 minutes. It was awful. But I noticed that whenever I go to cons now and I have um my partner with me or like multiple people, like multiple helpers, it seems to severely cut down on the amount of weird people I have approaching me. But also, I'm like so sorry that other people suffered the same fate at the hands of this guy. That was like definitely not the only weird encounter I've had or had at that Comic Con, but it was the one that stood out the most to me. I think it was like extra bad because the con was so slow for me. Like sales were so not good at that convention for me that I guess he thought like, "Oh, she's free. That means I can just stand here and keep talking." You think you're mostly numb to the weirdos. Yeah, it's like in the moment I'm just like, "Uh-huh. I see. Yes." But then afterwards I'm like, "Oh my God. Please leave me alone." It's like I can deal with it, but I just don't want to expend the mental energy to do that. Yeah, like being at a con and like tabling means you kind of do have to engage socially on a certain level pretty constantly for the whole day. And so that's why having helpers is also really great. So you can trade off. Like I kind of have like the switch that turns on, the mode that's like, okay, it's convention mode, and then I kind of autopilot a little bit, but um like switching out of that and having to turn it on at all is like super exhausting. Like after I come back from the con, I don't want to talk to anyone for like 2 weeks. I don't want to see anyone for like 2 weeks. Okay, I think we got all the questions. So I think that's a pretty good point where we can call it now. Yes. I hope that it was helpful to you guys. I kind of rambled a lot, but I hope there was some good information for you in there somewhere. I will be putting the VOD up on YouTube later, probably after I eat and all that. You're hoping to try and start selling some art things at some point next year. Yes, good luck with it. I'll put the VOD up later. I will. Yes, thank you guys for coming to watch. Especially like the other artist alley friends that I have that I'm like, I don't think you guys even need this info, but thanks for coming. Yes, next time I'll draw and I will have new things to share, like new cover. Yes, everyone have a good night.